Welcome to another deep dive with us. And today we're going to be cracking open a story you might think you know, the parable of the prodigal son. But we're going deep, like way deeper than just the Sunday school version. We've got the King James version of the Bible right here, Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. And we're going to be pairing that with some thoughts from Father John Henry Hansen. Get ready, because this isn't just some dusty old tale. It's got psychological twists and turns that still resonate today, even if you've never even stepped foot in a church.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how this parable, told by Jesus centuries ago, speaks to something so human.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Jesus was actually facing criticism for spending time with people society had labeled as sinners. This parable was his way of showing that everyone has a chance to return home, to find redemption. It's a powerful message of God's just like infinite mercy.
All right, so let's set the scene here. We've got a father and two sons. The younger son is itching for freedom, that feeling you get when you just want to break free and just see the world. He demands his inheritance and takes off to live it up right. Haven't we all felt that pull at some point in our lives?
Oh, absolutely. That yearning for something more, that hunger for experience, that's so relatable.
Yeah.
And the parable really captures that feeling of diving headfirst into the unknown, just like the younger son gathers his belongings and just heads off to this distant land.
And of course he blows it all, riotous living, the Bible calls it. I imagine him today like racking up credit card debt, chasing fleeting highs, just burning through that inheritance like there's no tomorrow. It's almost like watching someone spiral, like you see with like social media influencers or day traders just like burning out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And yet the parable doesn't judge him for it. It simply shows us how we often, chase after those empty pleasures, those things that promise happiness, but really just leave us feeling hollow inside, something we've all experienced in different ways.
Totally. And then comes the crash. He's broke, famine hits, and he's scraping by feeding pigs. It says he's so desperate he even wants to eat the pig food. It's like hitting absolute rock bottom, maybe like losing everything in a bad investment or dealing with addiction. It's a stark image of just how lost he's become.
And this is where it gets really interesting. It's not just talking about physical hunger. It's about a deeper kind of hunger, a spiritual emptiness. The son is longing for connection, for meaning, for something more than just the shallowness that he's surrounded himself with. This is what Father Hansen calls the grace of repentance.
And so he finally has this realization, this moment of clarity where he thinks, my father's servants are living better than me. I've got to go back. It's like he wakes up from a bad dream, right? He swallows his pride and decides to go home, ready to just beg for any scraps of forgiveness he can get.
Yeah, it's that moment of grace that Father Hansen talks about.
Yeah.
He describes it as a stark disillusionment. The kind that comes when you realize you've been chasing the wrong things and you're just completely lost. He even prepares a whole speech saying he's not even worthy to be called his son anymore.
But then, and this is where it gets good, the father sees him coming from a long way off and runs to meet him. There's no anger, no I told you so. Just pure joy and relief. He throws his arms around his son, kisses him, and orders this huge feast to celebrate his return. It's pure, unconditional love, right?
This is the heart of the parable. The celebration of someone who is lost and finds their way back.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful message of hope and forgiveness that speaks to that, universal desire for second chances, whether you view it from a religious perspective or not.
Totally. But hold on, there's another son in this story, the older one. He's the one who stayed home, worked hard, and did everything right. And let's just say he is not happy about this whole welcome home party.
And this is where the parable takes another turn. The older son represents a different kind of struggle, one that I think a lot of people can relate to. He's been responsible, always trying to please his father, but underneath it all, he's harboring a lot of resentment and feels like things just aren't fair.
Yeah, he straight up complains to his father saying, I've been slaving away for you all these years, never disobeyed a single order, and you never even gave me a goat to party with my friends. It's like he's keeping score,
Yeah.
Thinking, where's my reward for being the good son? Have you ever felt that way? Like you're being overlooked when someone else gets all the attention?
Yeah, it's a very human reaction, especially in a world where we're constantly being judged and measured. And what's fascinating is that the older son's complaint kind of reveals how he sees love.
Yeah.
Something you earn, something transactional. It shows that in a way, he's struggling to understand the concept of unconditional love.
And his father's response is so powerful. He says, son, you are always with me and all that I have is yours. It's like he's trying to say, my love for you isn't based on what you do. It's just there. It's a completely different way of understanding love, isn't it?
It is, and it speaks to our own insecurities and anxieties about, being good enough. The father is reminding the older son that he doesn't have to earn love. It's a gift, freely given. It's a message that I think a lot of us, myself included, need to hear sometimes.
But the older son is stuck in his own head,
Yeah.
fixated on what his brother did wrong and how it's not fair that he's being celebrated. It's almost like he can't grasp the concept of forgiveness and grace.
And this brings up a really important question for all of us. What are we holding on to? Those grudges, those feelings of being wronged,
Yeah.
that might be preventing us from experiencing, love and acceptance more fully.
Whoa.
It's a tough question, but one that's worth considering.
Absolutely. And how do we learn to accept that we are loved simply for who we are, not for what we do or accomplish?
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a challenge, no doubt.
Uh.
But the parable offers us this glimmer of hope. The father invites the older son to join the celebration, to let go of his anger, and just embrace his brother's return.
It's like he's saying, there's room for everyone here, no matter what's happened in the past.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful message of just inclusion and forgiveness.
And it reminds us that true joy often comes from, releasing our need to control, from letting go of that need to earn love, and instead just simply receiving it as a gift. But this is just the beginning of our exploration. There are layers of meaning and symbolism woven into this parable that we'll uncover in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
So we just dove into all the emotions and the psychology of the prodigal son story, but now I want to talk about something else that just really stuck out to me. The symbolism. It's like every little detail in this parable is layered with meaning. For example, that far country that the younger son runs off to. It's more than just a physical place, right?
Exactly. Think of it more as representing a state of being. It's that feeling of being alienated from what truly matters.
Yeah.
Your values, your loved ones, maybe even your own sense of self. And the way that he just burns through his inheritance. It's as if he's desperately trying to find fulfillment in all the wrong places.
So it's not just about physical distance. It's about that internal separation we all experience at times. Like when you get caught up in a job you hate or a relationship that's no longer serving you, you're there physically, but mentally and emotionally you've checked out.
Precisely. And then there's the symbolism of the pigs. You have to remember, in Jewish culture, pigs were considered unclean. So the fact that the younger son is reduced to tending them, it really highlights just how far he's fallen. Not just financially, but spiritually and emotionally as well.
Yeah, it paints a pretty vivid picture of hitting rock bottom, doesn't it? And what about the feast the father throws when his son returns? There's some serious symbolism there too, right? Oh, absolutely. Think about it. The fatted calf, the finest robe, a ring for his finger, these are all signs of restoration and celebration. The father is going all out to welcome his son back into the fold, not just with forgiveness, but with honor and joy.
It's like he's saying, you're not just forgiven, you're back home where you belong. Let's celebrate.
Oh.
It's such a beautiful image of just unconditional love and acceptance.
And it's important to remember, the historical context here, too. Jesus was really challenging the religious establishment of his time, who were all about rules and rituals, about who was in and who was out. This parable was this radical statement about God's love being available to everyone, no matter what they've done.
So it was this revolutionary idea that you don't have to earn your way back into God's good graces. It's already there waiting for you.
Exactly. And that message is just as relevant today. Even for those who might not identify as religious, we all have times when we feel lost, disconnected, we've messed things up. This parable offers a glimpse of what it means to be welcomed back, to be embraced with compassion and love, regardless of our flaws. It's a powerful reminder that it's never too late to turn things around and find our way back to what truly matters. But I keep thinking about the older son, the one who stayed home and followed all the rules. His struggle feels just as real, even if it's not as dramatic as the younger son's journey.
It absolutely is. He embodies that part of us that strives for perfection, that tries to earn love through achievement and good deeds. And in a way, he's even more lost than his younger brother, because he's trapped in this cycle of trying to prove himself worthy.
It's like he's so focused on doing everything right that he's missing out on the joy and the freedom of simply being loved for who he is.
Father Hansen talks about how the older son needs to learn to receive love as a gift, just as the younger son needs to learn to be content with returning home. They both have to go through their own process of recovery, so to speak.
I like that. So it's about both sons finding their way back to that place of wholeness and belonging. And it's so easy to see how we get caught up in these ideas of merit and deservingness.
Especially in today's world, right? We're constantly bombarded with messages about success, achievement, proving our worth. It's easy to lose sight of the simple truth that we are inherently valuable and worthy of love, just as we are.
And that's such a hard lesson to learn, especially when you're surrounded by those messages of you have to hustle, you have to prove yourself, you have to earn your place.
Absolutely. But this parable offers a powerful invitation to challenge those messages. It encourages us to step into the fullness of who we are, knowing that we're already loved and accepted, imperfections and all.
It's like a radical act of self-love to simply receive that love without feeling the need to earn it. But how do we actually do that? How do we apply these lessons to our everyday lives?
That's the question, isn't it? And one we'll continue to explore in the final part of our deep dive. Stay with us.
As we've been unpacking this parable, what's really stuck with me is Father Hansen's idea that the prodigal son isn't just like a one-time story, but something that like plays out in our lives over and over. He says we experience it every day and even like repeatedly during the 24 hours of the same day.
Yeah, it's a pretty profound thought, isn't it? This journey of straying and returning, of losing ourselves and finding our way back, it's not just a one and done deal. It's like it's woven into the very fabric of our lives.
Yeah.
These constant shifts between, feeling connected and feeling lost.
So it's not just about forgiving ourselves for those big life-altering mistakes, but it's about recognizing those like smaller everyday moments where we make choices that take us further away from what truly matters, like maybe snapping at someone you love because you're stressed, or spending hours scrolling through social media instead of working on that creative project that lights you up. Those little prodigal moments happen all the time, right?
Exactly. And the good news is that that fatherly love, that grace, it's always available to us, no matter how many times we stumble.
Mm-hmm.
It's about cultivating that awareness, that ability to catch ourselves when we're veering off course and gently guide ourselves back.
It's like we're all these prodigal sons and daughters just constantly navigating that tension between, wanting to explore and wanting to feel safe and loved. But what does that even look like in our modern world? Like if we were to rewrite this parable for the 21st century, what would it even look like?
That's a great question to consider. What would the modern prodigal son run away from? Would it be the pressures of social media, the demands of a high-powered job, the constant need for validation?
Maybe he'd be chasing likes and followers, pouring all of his energy into building this online persona that's not even authentic to who he is. Or maybe he'd be chasing that next promotion, working himself to the bone, sacrificing his health and relationships just for the sake of climbing the corporate ladder.
Could be any of those things and probably more. And what about the pig food in today's world? What are those empty, unsatisfying things that we cling to when we're feeling lost and disconnected?
I mean, it could be anything that promises fulfillment but ultimately leaves us feeling emptier than before. Binge-watching shows for hours on end, endlessly scrolling through social media feeds, retail therapy that just creates more clutter and debt.
Yeah, it's those things we turn to for comfort or distraction, but they never truly nourish us. They're like junk food for the soul.
It really makes you wonder, if the parable was set today, what would that moment of realization even look like for the modern prodigal son? Would it be hitting a wall with burnout, realizing that all those likes and followers don't actually translate to real connection? Or maybe facing a health crisis brought on by chronic stress?
And more importantly, what would it take for him to find his way back? What would that return home look like in a modern context?
Maybe it would involve stepping away from social media, reconnecting with nature, prioritizing relationships over achievements, or just creating space for silence and reflection.
It's about finding our way back to that inner sanctuary, that place of peace and acceptance that resides within each of us. That's where the real feast is, the celebration of our own being, the recognition of our inherent worthiness and belonging.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a challenge. Take some time to reflect on your own life through the lens of this parable. What are you running away from? What are you seeking? And what does it mean for you to return home?
Yeah, keep those questions in mind. As you go about your day, you might be surprised by the insights that emerge.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of the prodigal son. Until next time, keep diving deep.